Book Blitz! Welcome back to Twilight, everybody. Chapter 10, Interrogations. Last time, there was a whole lot of exposition, and finally, it's time to get back into that exposition again.
Don't you love it?
These few chapters are handled better, but are still in some ways just as annoying on the exposition side as those 5 or 6 chapters in a row in Aragon where Brahm's basically spending the entire time explaining things.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Well, I didn't hate these chapters like I hated those chapters.
I mean, like I said, they're not as poorly done, but you know, when you're talking about what actually happens, when you really think about it, not all that much actually happens. Like, the next few chapters are a whole lot of explaining, oh yeah, here's how vampires work. It's not actually the plot progressing in any way. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, there's small things that progress the plot. Like at some point here, Bella's going to meet Edward's family, and that progresses the plot a little bit. But I don't know. On the whole, it's a lot like those early chapters of Aragon.
I mean, I don't know. It just feels, because I feel like though, I never got that. Like, because this is just perhaps my immediate, like, my guttural response to these chapters versus my guttural response to them in Aragon. Aragon, it just felt more turgid, more poorly well written, less interesting, less necessary, on and on. Like, it was just like, God, please, God, no, please, God, no. Like, because in Aragon, you're getting all this exposition before you even know what the hell the point of the whole story is. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's just happening. Whereas, like, it's like you barely even like, because it's the whole thing's like, I don't know. It didn't feel good. Whereas, like, the exposition in this chapter, in these series of chapters, although by the end of it I am like, okay, come on, I want to what's happening with their relationship. Let's continue on. You know. I feel like it's couched in, like, at least you know what the central motivating force is. Okay, what's their relationship going to be? What's going to happen, you know, in this young romance, you know what I mean? And that's just, so you can kind of be invested in something that this attaches into reasonably, versus just like, and now this is the chapter where Brom talks about dragons. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, and now, the other chapter, where the other person talks about dragons. I don't know.
And this is the chapter where they spend the entire time building a saddle for a beast that hasn't been seen in over a century, but somehow the man that Aragon does not discern is a dragon rider until the end of the book. Cannot fathom how, and doesn't even question why.
Clark, stop!
No,
this is Twilight.
I want to build a dragon saddle.
This is Twilight, Clark. We can stop. We don't have to go back to that place. At least not yet.
We're going back very soon. At the time of recording this, everybody, we're on chapter 10 now, so you will, I believe, have seen heard 9 chapters of Eldest. We have yet to even begin recording those, and I am really looking forward to it, and I don't think Dylan is.
I just, no, not at all.
I'm so excited.
I've actually enjoyed Twilight. You know what I mean? And not to just like rag on Polini, but just like, I actually enjoyed it. You know what I mean? Like, I enjoyed Twilight. I enjoyed Aragon when I was a kid, but I like to go from, oh man, this story that, yeah, you know, maybe it's stereotypical romance, but it's fun and enjoyable, and, you know, like, to just Aragon, which is just like mess, death, mess, just God, why God, no, God, no, like,
no, Barack, no, Barack,
no.
That is a joke literally no one will understand. Welcome back to Twilight after that incredibly long detour back into Aragon.
If we could just not have that in the entire episode, to be honest. Like, we could just...
Oh, no. That's staying because it's important information. the day after Edward rescued Bella from the muggers in Port Angeles, they meet up at school, or rather, Edward picks Bella up to take her to school, and he's going to drive her in his Volvo. And Edward, I mentioned this very briefly yesterday, but Edward drives like an insane person. He drives like well over 100 at all times. Like he's, but this is the other thing. Vampires, while not all of them can read minds, all of them are incredibly graceful and incredibly strong and incredibly good reflexes.
They have like super senses of sorts. So you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
they're basically just they have superpowers. They're super heightened abilities. They're superhumans, and so he can drive so flawlessly that he was even going breakneck speed through Port Angeles, dodging cars and signs and all sorts of things by just quarter of an inch. And that's pretty much Edward's default driving speed, which really bugs Bella. She doesn't like it. And she actually tries to get him to slow down, but he thinks it's boring. So anyway, they're driving on their way to school, and they they talk about some more stuff. Bella tries to find out more about Edward's family, but we're going to learn a lot more about them pretty soon. And Jessica ambushes Bella at school. She wants to know all about what's going on with Edward. Are you secretly dating? What's going on? And Bella kind of pushes her off to talk to her later. And this is where the mind reading stuff gets really, honestly, kind of weird and gross. This part kind of bugs me a little bit. Like the concept in general, I guess, doesn't bug me very much. Like I said, I was kind of surprised by your reaction, but this in particular is an example of where I kind of see what you're saying. It's kind of like, yeah, that's kind of, that's weird. When you really think about it. Edward reads Jessica's mind and warns Bella that she is going to ask all sorts of questions in class about, if they're dating, how Bella feels about Edward, if they're more than friends, if they like each other. Edward tells her that he's going to be listening in. He's going to be listening into Jessica's thoughts to follow along with the conversation with Bella. And he can do this from, a different classroom in a different part of the school. So that's where it kind of gets weird to me. And granted, that's how he tracked Bella into Port Angeles in the first place and was kind of keeping her safe. So I guess it's a two-edged sword. It's got some good stuff, but it's got some bad stuff. But I don't know. It's just weird to me that he's like using Jessica's mind to track Bella and like find out what she's saying. Like, I guess that's something you would like, if we're being completely honest. If you had the ability,
power, you would exercise it. Yeah, that's the inherent like flaw of humankind. Is like at the moment we have power over someone, we would use it immediately, no questions asked, just because we can. Like, yeah, and so it's like, and the longer you have that power over someone, even if you restrain yourself at first, eventually you're just going to use it. Like, because to not use power is actually more difficult. Like it's actually an effort, whereas using it is sometimes easier than not. Anyway,
well, the moral dilemma. What's interesting to me is the moral dilemma would not be, do I listen to people's minds in the first place, instinctively anyway? You'd have to be thinking a little more deeply to get into that territory. It would be, do I take advantage of the knowledge I gain? Not do I gain that knowledge in the first place? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the end, not to get too philosophical here, but that's there's no difference between the two of those. Like, there's no difference between like reading the mind and then having the like intent to use it. Like, you can't, the moment you could read it, you would use that information even if you're gonna not use that information because you have it. Like, I don't know, it's maybe that doesn't make tons of sense, but it's like but because you would, if nothing else, like, well, yeah, you might not tell someone about that information, like you always have that inside of you. You know what I mean? Like you would never, you automatically are in a sense using that information. So I guess what I'm trying to say, like you're not, and humankind would never restrain itself. You know, or if a human being would never ever, for their entire lives, with everyone, everywhere, be like, oh, I'm not going to use any of the information I get from having read their mind. You know what I mean? That would be impossible. Right. And so it's just, but that's why I would, like, for one individual in a story, I can allow that. But at least when it comes to, like, if you actually care about OP characters, which I suppose is a really picky, random thing to care about, but, like, I think it's true. People end up, like, wanting characters, because if your characters are too powerful, they become not interesting. Like, if they can do anything without effort, then what's the point? Like, there's no struggle, and that's the whole point of story in a lot of ways. It's just to talk about people's struggles. And so that's why Superman is always, like, that's why he's less popular than Batman, because in the end he's so powerful and so perfect that no one cares. And there's the occasional person who likes Superman more. And so, like, Superman is kind of almost like not a self-insert story, because it's not, but it's kind of meant to be there to be like, wow, wouldn't it be crazy if you could do this? You know what I mean? And more than
it's a product of its times. I mean, the reason you don't really have Superman characters anymore, at least not in that form, Superman came out in, I believe, the late 30s or 40s.
Yeah, and it was like around the Great Depression.
Yeah, so of course,
like, he actually was like a jerk. He actually was like a huge jerk, like even racist. Like he was just like it was actually pretty bad. The very, very, very first Supermans are like the worst. He's actually just like this huge asshole.
Well, but it's a sign of the times, right? It's a sign, like there's a reason that from, like, I don't know, like, let's say 2005 to like the early 2010s, we had a trend of dark, edgy reboots of superheroes. Like, everything had to be dark, everything had to be edgy.
Now let's ask ourselves a really serious question here.
Yeah.
How important is this to Book Blitz?
I don't know.
Like, I feel like this is a tangent from which we will make an entire podcast and we'll never recover. But it matters because the whole point is struggle. And so, like we talked about, so it just ends up, I don't know, it's, and particularly in a situation where your character already is OP, that is to say, he's immortal and has superpowers. You know what I mean? Like, now he can read minds too. I don't know. And I think it's weird because in my version, at least, Bo has like a moral dilemma with that for like 2 seconds. Like, he kind of like, because she says that, like, in where, like, the version that she's going, okay, well, I'm going to be listening in on her mind to know what's happening. And like, he kind of goes, what? And he's like, huh? And he goes, should I even do this? Is that even okay? Because she gives him information, like, because she actually tells him things she's picked up. And he kind of hesitates with it then, but then never again. He doesn't really care. And so it's like, I don't know. It just,
in that sense, at least, it's kind of like Aragon. It's like, well, we had that moral discussion. That's covered forever.
But that's actually realistic. Like, if in the end your super hot girlfriend could read minds and was offering to give you that information, if you would maybe like have a qualm immediately, but then you would kind of just, yeah, give it to me. You know what I mean? Like, anyway.
Let's move on. So, anyway, the whole reason Edward is listening in on the conversation is because he is just as curious as Jessica about what Bella is going to answer regarding how she feels about Edward, if she feels romantically toward him or not. And Bella kind of gives these half answers. She doesn't really. She does say one thing in particular. She says that she thinks that she is more into. She cares more about Edward than he does about her. Well, that's important because when Bella goes to lunch, Edward invites her to have lunch with him at a different table. And he specifically brings that up, and he's kind of upset about it. He's like, you know, do you have any idea how much I care about you in order to resist everything in me that's wanting to, like, drink your blood, and that I've, you know, tried to keep you alive so much and all this. And he's not saying it in, like, an angry way exactly. He's just more kind of, he's upset that she doesn't understand that he cares about her so much. And she counters by saying, well, you know, she says, you seem to be trying to say goodbye when you're saying something else, which the wording on that has always kind of thrown me off a little bit. But basically what she's saying is he's non-committal. Like he's very flighty. It's like she never knows when he's going to go back into one of these moods. And then, well, now he's out of my life yet again. And he says that, well, that just means I care about you because it's better if we're not together because I'm a vampire and stuff. But he's like, but
thanks, Anakin Skywalker.
Oh my gosh.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, no, for real though. Like, I don't know why that's a trope for like girls, young girls. Like this kind of guy who's like, I don't care, but I do care. Like I don't, you know what I mean? I don't get it.
I don't know.
But then some girls don't get why guys are into butts. So I understand that. You know, it's a trade-off.
Well, yeah. Those are words we said just now. Moving on from those words we just said now. Basically, the whole point is that Edward invites Bella to use his car, for him to drive her and use his car to go to Seattle on her Seattle trip. Or to go somewhere entirely different with him if she would rather do that. And he says that he doesn't know how well her car can do on a trip like that. And she doesn't want Charlie to know about Edward. She wants to keep Edward a secret. And Edward, you know, honestly would rather for Charlie to know. He's a lot more upfront in that way, but he's kind of going along with it for now. And he's like, okay, fine. All right.
But just go along with it. In my version, at least, and I'm sure your version too. It's kind of like it's something just she's going along with it. Like she's actually kind of pissed off that he didn't tell.
Oh
Charlie.
yeah, well
like,
I don't mean just kind of. I mean like ultimately like, he agrees to keep it a secret, but like that's not what they want. That's not what he wants. Like he wants it to be up front. He wants it to be known.
Which I actually like. I like that dynamic because I thought that was very real. Like like anyone who's ever like had like something like an addiction of some sort. Like I've known people like that. Like they need accountability. You know what I mean? They need somebody to be like, hey, I need your help. Like I can't trust myself to not do this horrible, no good, very bad thing. And then like. So that's like here we go. If I have someone who gives me a negative incentive to not do this thing that I know I'll eventually do at some point, then boom. Like I don't know. I was like, oh, I get that. That's real, man. That's like the real deal. She could end up never bringing him back because he's dead, and he has to kind of accept that fact. Like, and that's she's like constantly warning him about that, because if she doesn't bring him back because he told his dad, then there's going to be an investigation, and that's like a negative incentive to keep the kind of predator vampiric nature of Edith from like overpowering the human, you know, the actual like reasonable version.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I guess maybe I've read too much into that. Like, because, I mean, that definitely is there. Don't get me wrong. That's definitely part of it. But I don't know. It always struck me as more than that. But maybe not. Anyway, so they decide that on Saturday they are going to do something else. They're not going to Seattle after all. They're going to go. She's going to go with Edward to some other place. And she just doesn't want Charlie to know about it. And then she also finds out that this is right up there with the whole Chaucer stuff to me. She finds out that when she asks about the hunting, and Edward explains that when they went to the place where you do a lot of bear hunting and stuff, Edward prefers to hunt mountain lions and Emmett prefers to hunt bears. But they always try to preserve the ecosystem of the area no matter where they're hunting. And that's partly that's granted, there's a part of that is simply put like to avoid detection, right? There's a part of that that's but there's also part of it that's just they're so beyond perfect that not only do they limit their hunting to non-humans, but they make sure that in their hunting of non-humans, they do so in the most environmentally friendly way possible. Like, I don't know, it just cracks me up, dude.
Yeah, I got you.
Oh my gosh. Anyway, well, that's about it, really. They have lunch together. That's most of the chapter. Do you have anything to add?
Wait, so is this when they're at the like cafeteria?
Yeah.
Doesn't she like go to what's her face and like in my version he goes to the girl that likes him and like pretends, has this whole big scene where she's like, I'm done with this, whatever your name is. I can't pretend like pretend that you don't love me or whatever, or something like that. And so to make the person like to basically make the girl feel special because now she has this information about the fact that like not only does she like him, but she's got a guy who likes him, so that he gives the guy a chance.
That's not in the original at all that I remember. So what is this whole thing?
Yeah. So in my version, like, unless I am not, we're in the wrong chapter and I just don't know it. Like, yeah, there's this whole thing where like they're sitting there and they're like talking about her vampirism and they're sitting together at lunch, and like, yeah, she there's this girl that you already know likes him, and there's a guy that likes her, and that's already kind of new information for you. But then something about what the information that Edith gives him, Bo just kind of spontaneously decides. Was it spontaneously? I feel like this may be in another chapter. Anyway, it ends up being this master plan, this master idea he has to like fix that whole thing without having to like be a jerk to her, and yet also making it more likely for the guy that likes her. I don't know. I'm trying to remember if I remember right, because I can't remember if the guy likes her.
I think you may be thinking of the part when and this is because this is the only part of the book I can think of that's like that. That there's a section where like she's asked about, like, I think it's Mike asks her. He says, like, Jessica asked me to the dance, but I would rather go with you. I was wondering if you would ask me, and she goes, oh no, you need to say yes to Jessica, and I think she really, really is into you and all this. And then they end up having a really good time, and like.
No. That's there. That's in my version, but with the gender bent, it's.
Yeah. So this, maybe I'm just forgetting, but I don't remember anything like.
No.
In
my version,
about.
This is like an actual big scene. Like it's like this big deal. It's not a whole chapter, but it's a big scene in the chapter where he pretends to have been complicit in trying to make what's his face jealous. But then, actually, or at least like he makes this big scene about the girl liking him because she wants to make what's his face, the guy who I think may not have noticed her yet, but like, or something like that, or she's been too focused on him to not actually be focused on the guy who likes her. And so she has this, I'm making all this he bullshit. It's so confuse the listeners, but Bo goes like, I'm done with your tricks, you know. If you come back to me sometime when you want to make this serious or whatever. So it feels like or something like that. So it makes her look like this femme fatale who's broken Bo's heart and therefore is even more, you know, desirable for the guy who likes her, and then also, you know, makes her feel special. And I don't know, it's something about that where, and so it ends up resolving this whole weird dynamic where like this other girl likes him and even like bought a prom dress and is wanting to take him to prom in the future because this isn't prom yet. And also is interesting because it's all catalyzed by the fact that Edith can read minds and gave him the information from that.
Wow, yeah, that's not in the original at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. I mean, like the closest is what I mentioned earlier, that there's no big scene about all that. But that is really cool. That is interesting that there's like that whole there's that whole other plot line going on. Like subplot, I guess I should say.
I mean, I don't feel like it's because I feel like wasn't there some other guy other than just Michael who likes?
Oh sure, I mean there's
Edith?
There's that likes. You mean is there a girl that likes Edward?
No, not Edith. Bella.
Oh yeah, well version. Bella's got like really two main guys that are into her. There's Mike. But that gets resolved because Jessica asks Mike to go to the dance. And then,
so like her kind of, because that's Jeremy in my version. So Jeremy and Michaela in my version.
Yeah, so that happens.
But then
in your
there's
version.
like,
and then there's
in my version, the girl that's driving the car that almost kills Bo.
Yeah, that's Tyler. In
Tyler, and there's another girl that either Tyler likes or likes Tyler. In my version, but in my version it's not Tyler, it's a guy. So in my version it's Tiffany.
The most recent thing, I really don't remember, to be honest. Like I don't think that that's really a thing in the original, but the closest thing that happens with Tyler is that in the not last chapter, but the chapter the Port Angeles chapter, I think. Bella finds out from one of the girls that Tyler has been telling people that he's going to the prom with her. And Bella's really annoyed at that because no, she didn't say that. She said maybe. And at this point, she has no plans of going to the prom with anybody at all. And then that pays off at the very end of the book when Edward gets on the phone with Tyler for a minute and kind of puts him off. And he's like, no, she's going to the prom with me. Sorry, bye. But that's the closest thing as far as outside of the Mike Jessica thing. That's the closest I can think of to what you're talking about.
No. Yeah. So I think that's the same thing, except in my version, it's resolved by this scene in the cafeteria instead of Edward being a dick to him over the phone.
I see. So yeah, okay. So it's handled a lot. So it's the same thing. It's just handled in a different part of.
Yeah.
Which actually, if that makes sense, because if what you're saying, you said the other time was true about the, if it was true, if I'm to believe you, no, but with that being the case, that the whole story just ends, then there wouldn't be that scene later on where Edward would be on the phone. To resolve that. So it makes sense that would have been resolved there in a different way. So, okay, that's kind of cool. So,
but also I think it's also like, I think that also might be like the kind of preference for girls thing. Like, I don't know. Because originally the whole book's for girls, right? And so like so Edward's the alpha male. You know what I mean? He's like the perfect guy. And so the perfect guy calls the other guy you don't like and disses him or, you know, does the thing right for you, and so it's like it's kind of a jerk move, but wow, isn't it so sweet? And then like, and then so basically like, whereas in this version, because it's a girl, it's gender bent, so the main character is a boy, but yet the audience is still girls, so therefore girls are still going to have somewhat of a preference, at least theoretically. This is maybe me reading too much into it. So in this version, instead of a girl getting, you know, torn up for the main character, it's handled to make her feel better, to make her feel more powerful instead of belittled. But that's perhaps me reading into things.
Well,
Blitz and a thing.
I think that'll do it.